Alright, so this video has been a long time coming. So this is based on Michelle Langley's book called Women's Infidelity. And just a reminder, find me on BitChute, bitchute.com/obsidian_pill. So, I had to bust out the good mic for this. For the fucking audiophiles who don't like my audio quality for a lot of my videos, I don't blame them. It's kind of shitty for a lot of them. But, I actually kind of like it because it has kind of like that hipster, old feel to it, where it's like low fidelity or whatever the fuck. Anyways, I kind of want to record a parody song, another one soon, relatively soon. But yeah, this is a long overdue video. The full title of the book is here, Women's Infidelity 2, Breaking Out of Limbo, How to End Your Confusion and Move Forward by Michelle Langley. I have not read the first book yet. I did read some of it, but I just finished the second book, as I said in my previous video. I discovered this book because I think I was on MGTOW or something like that, and I randomly read a passage from the book, which I had known about prior to that. I'm pretty sure I had known about the book prior to that, and the passage really struck me. I don't remember which one it was exactly, but I was just like, damn. And I was like, I have to read this book now. So I dug for it, and I found some Russian site that was hosting a copy of the book, and I just started reading it. But anyways, so basically the format of this video is, I highlighted a bunch of stuff that stood out to me, and I had to compress it because this is probably going to be a long video because I was highlighting so much of the shit that I read, and I had to kind of try to figure out how to compress it down so this video wouldn't be like ridiculously long, but whatever, that's my style anyways. You can watch it piecemeal if you want. So, and obviously you can just read the book yourself, but so yeah, basically I'm going to read those highlights and give comments as I feel appropriate. Okay, so that's the end of the intro to this fucking video. So let's go right into it. I got everything in front of me here. So the first passage that I felt the need to highlight is, she says, typically women in limbo are seeking reassurance about what they are doing. In other words, they're not looking for advice about how to change their situation. They're looking for someone to tell them what they're doing is okay, or that it's at least justifiable. So Michelle talks about this concept of limbo, as you can tell by the title and that passage. The definition of limbo is an uncertain period of awaiting a decision or resolution, an intermediate state or condition. In her first book, she outlines 4 stages of limbo, and I did read a little bit of that, of the first book, so I know, and I'll summarize them here. The first stage, it's 4 stages. The first stage is the woman has everything she wants in life. She has a husband, a house, kids, etc., but she feels like something is missing, and she loses interest in sex with her husband. And the second stage is she experiences a reawakened sexual drive from emotional and or physical encounters outside of marriage. Just as she might start feeling guilty, she begins instead to justify her cheating by blaming her husband for not providing her the feelings that these encounters do. The third step is woman is fully addicted to extramarital affair and seeks divorce or separation. Maybe the affair ends randomly, or it becomes a relationship, or whatever. On purpose, they might remain completely indecisive about choosing the lover, the extramarital lover, or the husband, because they want both. They want to keep the same thing and maintain their image of being good, or a victim of cheating, instead of a cheater. So that's just the first passage. Moving on. So I'm just gonna, like I said, I'm just gonna read these passages and comment as I feel necessary. I found that women often don't want to fix the problem. They just want to talk about it. I found that women often pretend to get offended and become emotionally volatile in order to prevent others from telling them the truth. They actually want others to fear their reaction. And here's a passage from, this is someone who writes to her. A lot of people, Michelle Langley, you get the impression, which is obviously true, that she corresponds with a lot of people and talks about their relationship issues and whatever. She kind of comes off as a sort of evangelist, which is fine, I guess, because she is revealing a lot of truth. But anyways, so this person is writing to her, and they say, I just read your book and I feel as though it was written about my life. My husband and I separated 6 months ago. My boyfriend moved in with me shortly after my husband left. I love my boyfriend very much, but I'm so confused and I don't know what to do. Last week was my wedding anniversary and I was very sad. I do still love my husband. I'm so torn. I can't imagine not being with my boyfriend anymore, but I can't imagine not ever working things out with my husband either. I know that my husband would like to get together, and I think we might get back together someday, but like I said, I really love my boyfriend. I just don't know what to do. So, these quotes point out that how even as a woman is literally making decisions, she will still act like a victim and pretend like there's still a decision to be made. Clearly, this woman was complicit in her separation from her husband and her subsequent moving in with her boyfriend. And Michelle Langley points this out, but she deludes herself into acting like she and her husband are meant to get back together. She's still stuck in limbo, essentially. There's another example that she gives similar to this, and it's of a woman who accused her husband of molesting their daughter falsely, and she behaves in the same way. Basically, she's still acting like she has a decision to make, but it's like, you literally accuse this man of molesting your daughter. All of these women behave in super predictable and similar ways, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more, but they act as though their experience is unique. And if only these females could see how alike they are, things would really change. But part of the reason, I'm going to get into the reason for that, and it's really basically because they need to maintain the women are wonderful delusion. So moving on. Life is a process of continuous choice making. We are continuously making choices every day. Yet, as I pointed out in Women's Infidelity, most people still seem to believe that a single decision or event can either ensure or destroy their chances of happiness in the future. And I talk about this on my channel sometimes. How women kind of feel like the fate of the world rests on one little decision, like what flavor of popcorn you're going to get or something. It's really absurd to witness firsthand. By the time a woman starts contemplating separation or divorce, she should already know that this isn't true. After all, don't most women want to get married because prior to marriage, they believe that this one event will guarantee them a lifetime of happiness? To suspend making a choice is a choice in and of itself. There is no non-choice where you can preserve access to both things indefinitely, only until you feel differently, But maybe there is. A lot of women seem to do that. That's essentially what limbo is. It's the non-decision decision where you can kind of try to keep the lover that you're cheating with and your husband. Feelings come and go, though. So anyways, I'm not sure what happened here. I'm pretty sure I had some comment. This Microsoft Edge feature I'm using is kind of janky, but I'm pretty sure I had some comment about how for a woman, love is a feeling, and for a man, love is an obligation. But anyways, moving on. Additionally, you should accept the fact that your husband would do anything that you asked him to do, and the only reason your needs were not being met in your marriage is that you never told him exactly what those needs are. So as much as these females virtue signal about honesty is the best policy and communication and all these other relationship cliches, none of them actually embody these things. And we're gonna get into that a little bit later about how women and normies think good virtue signaling is the same thing as virtue itself. They're vapid, superficial, soulless sacks of shit. Women will never own the fact that they refuse to even allow solutions to their problems. In this case, the woman won't even allow her husband to make her happy, even though the dude is clearly willing to do anything to do so because, again, duty. You see this all the time with unfaithful women. Any man who believes in relationships with these creatures needs to wake the fuck up. And she goes on to say, no, I'm because this woman is constantly playing the victim in this. She's like, oh, you're trying to turn this around on me. And then Michelle Langley says, no, I'm trying to make you see that you're not an innocent victim. You only created the life that you had with Brad, who was her husband that she cheated on. But you went after that life with a vengeance. You waited on Brad hand-and-foot because you wanted something from him, marriage. Let's not pretend like you were selfless or loving. You wanted something from Brad and you were willing to do whatever it took to get it. Brad was a pretty hot commodity when you married him and you wanted to be the one to win the prize. This part, basically just talks about how women mirror men and create this false image of themselves. They reshape themselves as best they can into being the thing that embodies everything a man wants, loyalty being one of the main things. That's why we get a lot of these trad wives that I talk about a lot who re-virginize. I forget what the surgery is called, but they quote unquote regain their virginity and they find God and all that stuff. But as soon as they get what they want, marriage, in other words, to trap the man, the veil comes off. And you hear about this all the time. So the choice then becomes for her to come clean about the fraud, which of course she won't do, or just hope that the man figures out who she really is, and she'll resent him all the while as he tries to figure out what it is that she wants. She'll resent him for the very fact that she was able to deceive him. Many women have a hard time taking responsibility for their actions because they've been conditioned to believe that they're innately good. Most of the time, they don't even have to make excuses for their bad behavior because society has always been eager to make excuses for them. This is one of women's greatest stumbling blocks to happiness. It allows them to believe that their happiness is contingent upon the behaviors and actions of others, as opposed to something that they alone control. Innocence becomes a lifetime condition of suspended development and lack of emotional growth. You see female comedians talk about that a lot. I talk about Whitney Cummings every so often. She kind of laments that, in comedy form, how, by the time a woman gets to like her 30s or whatever, she has no personality. She just, relies on her being cute essentially to get through life. Innocence in a girl becomes naivete in a grown woman. The romantic delusions of teenage women turn into infantile and unrealistic fantasies in the female adult. The infantilizing of women is reinforced throughout culture and fortified in myth and fairy tale. An innocent woman with her unrealistic expectations is set up for rage in both intimate and professional relations. The reason innocence sets up women for rage is that as long as we view women as innocent, we relieve them of responsibility. If the tables were turned and females had to make a financial commitment to support males for life, they too would be extremely leery of commitment, especially since in the past, even if a marriage didn't work out, the man was financially responsible for his wife for life. Not only did he try to avoid the problem, she's talking about the husband who's being cheated on here, but he began to reward you for acting like an asshole, which is, unfortunately something that we do a lot. It kind of goes into the axiom that I was talking about in my previous video, which is sort of a precursor to this video, about how People want what they can't have. Women want emotionally unavailable men, and so on. He probably started treating you better for treating him worse, which wouldn't make any more sense than expecting your dog to go to the bathroom outside, even though you gave him a treat every time he goes to the bathroom in the house. It's impossible for feelings to stay the same. Nothing has happened in your life so far that has put you in a perpetual state of bliss, right? The fact of the matter is, there is no such thing as a right person, and this is a reality that many people need to face. People pretend they already know this, but deep down, most people don't really believe it. Often, people secretly hope that there truly is a right person out there who will make them happy forever. Unfortunately, this belief, or even just having this hope, can keep people from happiness because love isn't about finding the right person. It's about treating a person right. Our economy has thrived as a result of our addictions. Advertising is a science of human behavior. People need to see advertisers and the media as the behavioral scientists they are. So, in this part, she's basically talking about advertising and how our love, the conception of love in our society, is really just an outgrowth of rampant consumerism and capitalism. And we've been sort of duped into this fantastical conception of love, which is completely unrealistic because we live in this consumerist culture which benefits from these sorts of delusions. However, notice that the movie always ends when the relationship begins. Consequently, our relationships mimic the movies. We want to keep turning unique partners in an attempt to relive those initial feelings and recapture that final moment in the movies. So yeah, Hollywood does kind of delude people into seeing only the journey and the infatuation aspects and stages of quote-unquote falling in love and relationships. But it doesn't actually show the reality, needless to say. That, suffice it to say. Yes, I believe most people feel that way after a few years of marriage. Many people live on autopilot, and when you're living on autopilot, you don't feel anything fully. Nothing resonates deep inside, therefore life seems boring and monotonous. I don't blame you, but whether or not that happens, she's saying she doesn't blame her for feeling depressed about not being able to stand her husband anymore, since her affair started. It will have little to do with you or it'll have little to do with the partner you choose or your life situation. You see, even your relationship with Kurt is the guy that she's cheating with, has resulted from living on autopilot. You didn't consciously choose to lie and cheat on your husband. You simply reacted in the same way you've always reacted when you became overly bored with your life. Prior to getting married, you ate, shopped, and watched TV to stimulate yourself when you were bored. And when that wasn't enough, you sought new relationships. So in essence, when people change relationships, they're typically just reacting in the same old way to the same old problem. Temporarily, it appears as though they're experiencing some type of growth or change, but instead, they're just repeating a familiar pattern. The objective in a society based on consumption is to keep individuals confused. When people are confused, they're easy to manipulate because their confusion makes them feel insecure. The excessive consumption that takes place in this country is a result of people's need to calm their insecurities that are intentionally created to increase consumption. No comments needed there. A lot of this stuff I'm just reading straight up because there's really no need to comment further on it. It just speaks for itself. Women tend to hide, suppress, and lie about and deny their sexuality in the same way that men tend to hide, suppress, lie about and deny their feelings. Females are constantly monitoring their behavior so as not to be labeled as a slut or a whore, while males are constantly monitoring their behavior so as not to be labeled a pussy. Almost every female, don't worry, more commentaries coming up. Almost every female grows up knowing that something just isn't right when it comes to the rules about sex. Okay, this is actually kind of a bullshit part. I'm not going to read that. You can read that on your own if you want. Women flaunt their feelings in the same way that men flaunt their sexuality. I just thought that was a pretty, interesting juxtaposition there. Fuck, I had a comment there too. What the fuck, man? I'm not using this Microsoft Edge shit again because it's deleted a lot of my commentary that I had here. But whatever. You see, one of the big problems in relationships today is that collectively, we've only been viewing things from a feminine perspective. Women believe that in the past men had it made, and many believe that they still do. Many women think that men have it better than they do, and nothing could be further from the truth. Do you think that in the past men wanted to shoulder all the financial responsibility? Do you think men wanted and still want to go off to war and die for complete strangers? Amen to that. The feminine archetype is now dominant. That's a huge typo, it looks like, in the Western world, and that most dangerously, we are virtually blind to the shadow side of this archetype. As a result, while we are vigilant against masculine forms of evil, feminine evil is taking over our culture. Can't say it any better than that. Do I actually want to read this part? It's kind of long. Yeah, I won't read it. You can read this on your own if you want. But it basically talks about how women have, well, basically I'll just quote this part. Feminine archetypal power takes different forms than masculine, where a father's authority is usually overt and direct. That of a mother is more commonly covert and indirect. So, for what women, basically it's saying that women maintain the pretense of not having authority or power when they have all the authority and power. So therefore this kind of ties in with how, we overlook feminine evil because it's more subtle, and we kind of magnify masculine evil because it's so overt. And the male kind of is the active agent in everything, but we are pretty much blind to female modes of operation because they're more subtle than the male. But yeah, that's basically what that's saying. You can read that if you want. I don't feel like reading all that. It's kind of a waste of time. And it talks about shame. How the female tactic of shaming, which you see normies do a lot and new males, is arguably actually it's like emotional abuse. It's arguably more potent than the male forms of abuse, which is like beating people up and stuff like that, like the obvious stuff, not the stuff that flies under the radar. All right, so there are a few reasons, because the person writing to Michelle Langley here is like, oh my God, how does nobody know about all these egregious female behaviors? And Michelle Langley says there's a few reasons. One reason, Shackleton, some author she quoted, pointing out, is shame. Today, it is almost sacrilegious to say anything negative about women. Our society has an image of women similar to the image that we used to have of priests. Priests were able to get away with molesting numerous children because child molestation went against the image people held in their minds of priests. And this clearly points out the unimpeachable status of women in Western society. I think it even exceeds what the priests are able to get it away with There's no shortage of people calling out perverted priests and who are willing to call them out. Women collectively get away with perverted and criminal behavior more than any given priest could dream. Yet the message society consistently points out, and the book mentions, is men are dangerous and evil. This is the message society tells us. Men are evil, dangerous, masculinity is toxic, etc. All media conspires to make men out to be bad, and it does the exact opposite for women. And this part kind of points out, your problems. This is kind of one of the overlying themes of the book too. Your problems become your identity. We need identity. If everything in our lives is easy, in other words, basic survival is we can take for granted. We don't have to worry about, food, which a lot of us obviously don't in the modern world, and stuff like that. We lose identity, and we have to create problems and create identity and so on. And this is, I think, why the affluent are as miserable as they are, to the point where they'll create problems for so that they can have identity. Women do give up much of who they are, but the reason is to accomplish their dream. Yet after they get what they want, women forget this fact and mistakenly think that they have given up and sacrificed in order to make their husbands happy. Women are not only oblivious to the ways men get screwed, but also to the ways that men sacrifice for their wives and families. Unfortunately, women have begun to believe their own hype, not realizing that the hype is doled out to get their viewership, their money, and their votes. And then the woman she's interviewing, I agree, it is sad. I must say you're not painting a very pretty picture of women, as if that's the goal. My intention is not to paint a negative picture of women. I'm simply trying to tell the other side of the story. We can't truthfully discuss the behavior of women unless we discuss all of it, the good and the bad. We simply have to bring women's negative behavior and tendencies to light. Worse than being abused is being abused by someone who actually thinks he or she is being kind and loving. Let me give you an example of something that women do all the time, thinking it's not only harmless, but that it makes them a good person. Yesterday, I went to my favorite coffee shop. When I walked in, I got in line behind a gentleman who had just paid for his purchase. My usual cashier looked at me, smiled a very warm smile, and said hello. Although she is always pleasant, she appeared to be particularly pleasant this time. When the man in front of me left, the cashier said, I'm sorry that guy took so long. I said hello to you so that he would hurry the hell up, but he didn't get the hint. I brought this up because if you're like most women in your situation, you probably think that you're somehow being kind by telling your husband the truth. And then the writer goes on, the correspondent, how can I tell my husband the truth? If I told Brad the truth, it would kill him about her cheating. No, what you're doing now is damaging to your husband. Sugarcoating the truth serves no one. Women constantly say to me that they can't tell their husband the truth because they won't want to hurt their husbands. But the truth is they don't want to lose the power they have over their husbands. Most women know full well that their power lies in their image. So not telling the truth is simply their way of remaining in control and maintaining special privileges. And you see that behavior in everywhere, ghosting even, which men do too, but women are certainly way more prone to do. You're acting as if it's men's fault for believing women's lies. Women seem to want men to not see through their deception and manipulation, but wouldn't it be just as easy for women to stop being deceptive and manipulative? Amen to that. So here, this part kind of goes into the whole women feeling like their bullshit is unique, and it's not unique at all. Unexplained events seem rare, and rare events naturally have a greater emotional impact than common events do. Once we explain an event, we can fold it up like freshly washed laundry, put it away forever in memory's drawer, and move on to the next one. But if an event defies explanation, it becomes a mystery or a conundrum. And if there's one thing we know about mysterious conundrums, is that they generally refuse to stay in the back of our minds. Explanation robs events of their emotional impact because it makes them seem likely and allows us to stop thinking about them. This explains why women spend endless hours trying to figure out why they cheated, as well as why women have more difficulty letting go of their affairs than men. Simply put, our society promotes the notion that women are not naturally inclined to cheat. Therefore, when a woman cheats, she finds her behavior to be mysterious, and mysterious events captivate our attention. So again, we touch on the good girl, innocent image that most women seem to have in their heads, which is perpetuated by society and media and so on. Women who cheat think that their experience is unique, and that couldn't be further from the truth. But that gives it mystery, which makes them contemplate their infidelity endlessly. It consumes them, and it becomes their identity. I have a friend, an old friend of mine, who's also, old, literally, or an older person, and, he's telling me the story about how they don't like their daughter's boyfriend, and he's a cuck, blah, blah, blah. And it's something along these lines. And at some point or another, the wife was like, you're supposed to be the mean one, or I'm supposed to be the nice one, or something like that, with regard to like how he was criticizing his daughter's cuck boyfriend. Anyways, every woman I've ever been close with personally thinks of herself as horrible, dumb, and immoral deep down, and that sentiment bubbles up to the surface a lot, where they will outright say so, enthusiastically. But one thing I notice is that they still hold on to this idea that there are women out there who are good, and like these hypothetical women justify the women are wonderful doctrine in their heads, because they're still protecting that good girl imagery for the female collective, even though, they don't embody it at all. They're the exact opposite. They know this, they admit to it, and this whole women are wonderful kind of leads to outright lesbianism, as far as I can tell, just like women worshiping women. And one little comment on the coffee shop girl. She tried to get what she wanted without saying what she wanted. The problem is many women care more about others thinking they are virtuous than actually being virtuous. This woman didn't tell her husband the truth because she feared losing her trump card. She feared that she would no longer be able to manipulate him through shame. A woman is only effectively able to shame a man if she believes that she is morally superior to him. Consequently, women are usually much more willing to give up their man than their image. Simply put, women fear that they will lose all the power in their relationship if they no longer have moral superiority. The fact of the matter is, if you want a man who can handle the truth, you must first be a woman willing to tell the truth. As I was saying, women and normies too often mistake good virtue signaling for being a good person. Morality is what you do when no one is looking, no one can see you, and no one can call you to account for your actions. So, so often are the paragons of goodness in our society being caught doing the most heinous things. You look at fucking Jeffrey Epstein and all the politicians connected to him and all that stuff, and what happened with him recently. There's a total disconnect between what people actually are and what they present themselves to be. But what else can you expect in this consumerist, materialistic, superficial society? Even the ancients knew this. I remember I was reading something about the Greek conception of love, and one of them was called, how they talk about like the Greek loves and like there's 4 loves and all that crap. One of them was called nomos, Nomos. And that's basically apparently that's my quote unquote love language or whatever the fuck. And, with that one, that's the one that tries to hold people accountable. Like, you can't just appear to be a good person. You have to actually be a good person. You have to, or at the very least, actually live up to the moral standards that you set for yourself and the morality that you project as your image. Many women today simply don't listen to anything men have to say. They feel as though they'll lose ground if they acknowledge any of their own shortcomings and wrongdoings. Likewise, they fear they'll lose ground by acknowledging any male goodness or feelings. Warren Farrell, in one of his books, tells a great story about something that happened in one of his workshops. During a workshop, a woman told him that she wished her partner were more like him because he was so tuned into his feelings. He informed her that he was not showing any sign of being in touch with his feelings. He was actually in touch with her feelings. Farrell also explained to her that because her husband wasn't in touch with his feelings, she was able to air her feelings 100% of the time. I think this story illustrates a very serious problem occurring in relationships today. Politicians, like the media, try to woo women with stories about how bad women have it, as well as stories about how wonderful women are. Because women aren't aware of the ulterior motive behind such stories, they have not only become gluttonous in terms of rights and special privileges, they've become emotionally gluttonous with the use of similar mantras. Me, more, more, more. You know, this highlights how in conversations with couples, you know, they always tend to revolve around the woman's feelings. The man just has to kind of sit there and shut the hell up and listen. You know, like you even see the new males and leftists and shit. Shut up and listen. You know, that whole meme phrase of theirs. God forbid the man makes us think about how he feels. That would be unmanly, and it would be unattractive, and it would be considered infantile, you know, but not for women who are neotenous. It's not considered that at all, because that's what we expect from them. It's what they expect from themselves. You know, it's always what he's doing wrong. And all men, even Chad, can probably relate to this. Disputes in relationships are all about what you're doing wrong, what you need to compensate for, because you're expected to carry the load of the relationship. God forbid you protest and flip it on her, though. You know, no woman has an adequate response when they're challenged on that. Like, what do you do for me? You know? So in that sense, men stonewall themselves by refraining from engaging. And Michelle Langley, you know, talks about this. I'm sure like a lot of other people talk about this too. Like, men, at some point, they just resign themselves to doing nothing because they realize they can't please women. So they stop trying. They stop trying altogether. And why shouldn't they? You know, women only want to hear what they want to hear. They don't want to hear anything about your problems. And that also goes into like how they just want to bitch just for the sake of bitching, and like as far as actual solutions go, it's like, fuck that. Who cares? So yeah. The political parties become like two parties in a custody battle, each vying for their daughter's love by promising to do the most for her. Ironically, when political parties or parents compete for females' love by competing to give to it, what? The result is entitlement. The political party, like the needy parent, becomes unconsciously dependent on keeping the female dependent, which turns into the female into the other, the person given to, not the equal participant. In the process, it fails to do what is every parent's and every political party's job: to raise an adult, not maintain a child. When the entitled child has the majority of votes, the issue is no longer whether we have a patriarchy or a matriarchy. We have a victimarchy. And the female as child genuinely feels like a victim because she never learns how to obtain for herself everything she learns to expect. Well, she learns how to obtain it for herself by saying it's a woman's right, but she doesn't feel the mastery that comes with a lifetime of doing it for herself, which is what a man would feel. And even when a quota includes her in the decision-making process, she still feels angry at the male-dominated government because she feels both the condescension of being given equality and the contradiction of being given equality. She's still the other. So with the majority of votes, she's both controlling the system and angry at the system. You know, and Warren Farrell, who that quote is from, is, I don't know if he's a Jew or not. He comes off as maybe a crypto, but broken clock is right twice a day, I guess. Unfortunately, while many men are giving women special treatment in their relationships, women don't really want that special treatment. They want men to stand up to them. When men don't stand up to women or challenge them when they're making ridiculous demands, women feel ignored. And what women primarily want from men is their presence. Women want to be with men who are awake. This is actually kind of a BS passage. I think women complain when men don't stand up to them, yeah, but When a man holds a hard line and speaks up for himself, they call it abusive for the very reasons that were outlined previously in this book. They're handicapped. They, quote unquote handicapped. They don't know what they want for exactly the reasons that were outlined. Like they don't even know. They don't, and that's because they don't take responsibility in the fullest sense. They essentially want to be told what they want. And that is why consumer culture is so effective on them, because that's essentially what consumer culture is, telling you what you want. This is proven. Marketers talk about this behind closed doors and how it's easier to market to women and stuff like that. This is one of the passages in the book where you can actually see a little bit of AWALT. I mean, there's a lot of little AWALT passages that you can kind of see, like, it's a woman who wrote this. There is a lot of truth in this book nonetheless, but I mean, men today, unlike women, don't feel like they have the luxury of doing what they want to do for a living, because as a culture, we still expect men to provide for their wives and families. As a result, men believe that the only way for them to receive love from a woman is to take care of her financially, so they tend to be much more entrenched in the struggle for survival than women. Unfortunately, people who are struggling to survive don't have time for soul searching. However, the struggle for survival is not the only reason men live on autopilot. They go on autopilot to tune out the constant demands and negative feedback they so frequently receive from women. For the last 30 years or more, we've been continuously knocking down males while at the same time building up females in an attempt to create gender equality. As a result, many males have switched themselves off. They've simply given up and stopped even trying to please females. So that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. So yeah, ironically, actually, the very reason men probably aren't as miserable as women might be the fact that we're more subject to the struggle to survive, which occupies our time and keeps us from philoskepsis, also known as navel gazing, also known as narcissism, egoism, whatever. And that breeds misery. Constantly contemplating the self breeds misery. The men who are miserable usually live quasi-aristocratic lives, and I count myself as no exception. I almost envy the ignorance of the working man sometimes, and, it's not like I've never had a job. Even now, I kind of miss my job. The one job that I've ever liked somewhat, which, it kept me occupied. And it's like, yeah, that's wage cucking or whatever the hell, but there's a reason. That's one of the reasons the system has been so successful, is because having a job does take care of a lot of a person's basic needs. And yes, that's largely for artificial reasons. Like, we have this system where we need money and all that crap. But, that's neither here nor there. In the beginning of a relationship, men usually do open up. However, as the relationship progresses, they start to shut down again because of the reaction they often receive from the women with whom they're involved. If women experience the same reaction when they talk to men, women will quickly learn to stop talking to them. In fact, many women get a taste of their own reactionary style of relating after they cheat on their husbands. For instance, you probably try to avoid getting in conversations with your husband right now because he has become so reactionary. Now, whenever the two of you talk, Brad is constantly looking for signs to see how you really feel about him. His close monitoring of your conversations has most likely caused you to shut down. Just a reminder, Brad is the guy who's being cheated on and, is suspicious of his wife and all that stuff. Separating was the safest way for you to get information on how your boyfriend feels, because first, you knew Brad would take you back if things didn't work out with Kurt. Kurt is the guy she's cheating with, just a reminder. And second, you wouldn't have to risk the possibility of rejection by directly asking your boyfriend how he felt. This highlights something that women do out of security. Instead of asking the man how he feels about her, or directly trying to find out, she'll just go cheat or flirt with other guys in order to gauge his reaction, sort of shit testing. You can't win as a man, because if you get mad at that, then she's all, you're kind of highlighting your low value, that you would even care about such a thing, right? That you would even feel that level of insecurity as a man. And she's all, oh wow, you don't own me. But if you don't get mad, then she's like, oh, he doesn't value me, So, you just can't win as a man. And the only reason she stupidly doubts how much her guy wants her or cares is because he's not a mind reader, because he's not perfect and can't fulfill her needs just by existing. So, and Langley talks about this a little bit, and she says women often mistake that for men not caring. But it's like if women would only communicate what they actually want, but And there it is, right below. Women say this all the time. I don't know what I want. I can't figure out what I want. Is it my fault if I halfway believe it and actually listen to them? They're just not living consciously. They're not living responsibly or consciously. And here, Michelle Langley kind of goes into a personal story about her mom and her brother was always bitching and moaning, and I just want, but she's being extremely vague, which is of course a female characteristic, about what she wanted, and she just kept saying, I want help, but then her brother finally got mad, and then he was just like, what do you want specifically? Tell me, And then she froze and didn't know how to react. She's like, I just want you to help me more. Repeating the same vague demand. And, eventually her brother just realized, yeah, that's what I thought. You just like listening to yourself complain. And here it goes into a cliche that you often hear, I love him, but I'm just not in love with him. Constant thing that you hear from women who are in limbo. But really it just means like, I don't want to have sex with him, and Langley kind of calls that out. Like, there's no difference between, loving somebody and being in love. The only real difference when women say that is sex. Like, you don't want to fuck the guy anymore. So, that was nice to see somebody point that out for once. And here's another example of how women lie. She's talking about here, this woman named Melinda is, cheating on her husband and with this guy, and this guy he got upset because this woman painted this picture, and women often do this, about how horrible and awful her husband, is, and how horrible their marriage is, and how it's bereft of love and sex. And it's like, meanwhile her husband is like giving her flowers, and they are having sex. She's still having sex with her husband, so she's kind of playing both of these dudes, because she's lying to the guy she's having an affair with by making her marriage seem to be so evil and horrible so as to justify the affair. But then almost because of the affair, remember we talking about the person being cheated on often wants to behave more nicely and compensate for, whatever they're apparently lacking. So, they often end up being nice to the person that's cheating on them or whatever. So it's like she's playing both sides, duplicitous. Affairs involve a splitting of the self. It is by becoming increasingly complex that the self might be said to grow. Complexity is the result of two broad processes: differentiation and integration. A complex engine, for instance, not only has many separate components, each performing a different function, but also demonstrates a high sensitivity because each of the components is in touch with all the others. Without integration, a differentiated system would be a confusing mess. Women compartmentalize. Like, they almost thrive on ambiguity and ambivalence and projection, and keeping the other, the husband or whatever, just as confused as they are, maybe without the ironic hidden clarity that they have about what they want. Ironically, they create chaos because they want to keep things the same, though. So it's like, I fucked whoever I wanted to when I was young and I was having fun, blah, blah, blah. I was riding a car carousel. But it's like, and they want to keep the security of marriage. So they don't want to grow. You see what I'm saying? Like, they want to keep things the same while also getting the benefits of like the next step of, being an adult and getting married and so on. They don't actually want to grow away from the carousel. And that's why, we often say like they got kicked off. It wasn't a choice to get off, because that would have been growth. So, constant arrested development with them. And Michelle touches on this desire for constant stagnation, but she doesn't seem to draw the same conclusions, and then the correspondent complains, "Oh, so you're saying I'm a confusing mess," which is another cliche. Like, women say that about themselves all the time. And, you're a mess because you want to be a mess and you refuse to take responsibility for yourself. I remember how surprised I was when it finally dawned on me, just like how females thrive in filth, like STDs, nasty house, nasty car, etc. Physically, the dirtiest people I've ever known have been women, and the women are wonderful. Doctrine and superficiality of women hides this fact from us. Like, some of those women who are so dolled up and who look so clean and pristine, and who virtue signal, so even cleanliness of the soul, so to speak, is faked. Behind closed doors, they're like the nastiest people, the most STD ridden people that you could possibly meet. So yeah, it's all fake. Reminds me of that, like, I've seen women like hide their herpes, use makeup to hide their herpes, and like all kinds of shit. And here they touch on open relationships, which, Langley brings that up occasionally. I actually thought she might have been in one, but then I remembered, she seemed to not think too highly of open relationships. So, who knows what's going on with her. So she says, that's one way I've seen people try to deal with the problem, but that's not what I was suggesting. I haven't interviewed very many couples in open relationships. The few I've spoken to have given me the impression that in the beginning that they feel like little kids in a candy store. After a while, the excitement begins to wear off. One couple told me that having sex with whomever they wanted soon became as boring as having sex with one person. I've said that in a previous video. Like, surely that is the case. I'm even reminded of one of my exes who said, we can have an open relationship, but just for you. And I said, go find me a girl then. Like, you would have an easier time finding me a second partner or whatever. And of course, she completely froze and didn't know how to respond to that because, I called the bluff. Women can only apparently want through someone else. So she couldn't simply own her desire for an open relationship. She was almost ashamed of herself because she knew I was going to call her on her bullshit. And she even said that, like, I knew you wouldn't, so she had to project her desire for an open relationship onto me, knowing full well that if I wanted that, I would flat out say that I wanted that. She had to preserve her image by making it out to be, and another thing women do a lot, by making it out to be me, the one who wants the thing, so she can alleviate her role and responsibility. Here it talks about how, the reason a lot of relationships become boring and monotonous is because they lack variety and time between duplicate experiences. So, you're not experiencing enough variety with that person. You're just sitting around, like, doing domestic shit, like doing laundry and fucking shit like that. And you don't have enough time apart. So as, even if you do the same things together all the time, there's, you get enough of a time apart that when you do the same thing with that person again, it's like more refreshing. And then it kind of talks about, people have so many choices when it comes to mates. It kind of goes into internet dating, like dating apps. When you have 50 people to choose from, you only skim the surface of each person because you're focused on the next person and you're not living in the moment, which is how you create pleasure, etc., etc. Love in this country is just another form of excessive consumption, which explains why people have difficulty forming lasting relationships. The more variety we have, the faster we need to consume in order to experience pleasure. Serial monogamy, basically. Here it talks about in order to truly experience pleasure, you need to be in the moment. Fantasies are counterproductive because they distract our attention. Experiences that give pleasure can also give enjoyment, but the two sensations are different. We can experience pleasure without any investment in psychic energy, whereas enjoyment only happens as a result of unusual investments in attention. A person can feel pleasure without any effort if the appropriate sensors of the brain are electrically stimulated or through drugs, but it is impossible to enjoy a tennis game, a book, or a conversation unless attention is fully concentrated on the activity. All that kind of touches on hypergamy, how, they're always looking for the next best thing. It's the journey, not the destination. After learning this, you can see why happiness is so elusive. The mind is only happy when attention is focused on something, because otherwise it has nothing to do. When the mind has nothing to do, it seeks out and creates problems in order to find something to do. This is why people are constantly striving for new things, as well as why they become restless and unhappy after they get the things for which they've been striving. Therefore, the final attainment of a pursuit can never bring happiness, because our attention is only focused on the attainment process. Whatever. And that's, all that is essentially to say that is why affairs are so fulfilling, because not only is your time with your affair partner or whatever spaced out, but when you're with them, the attention is completely focused in the moment. I've heard many women say that. I remember one woman telling me that she would never leave her husband for her affair partner because she didn't want to see her affair partner in a different light. She just knew she would lose all sexual desire if she saw him taking out the trash. So that encapsulates the appeal of affairs. When people are in relationships, oftentimes it's just one person's avatar or mask interacting with the other person's. It's exhausting having to fake who you are, and this is an exhaustion that I'll never know personally because I don't sugarcoat shit. And my channel is proof of that. Subconsciously, that's probably the very reason I don't sugarcoat, because it's exhausting. It's exhausting to fake. When women and normies do that, it's because they want things from other people. Why else would they engage in such a taxing thing, such a mentally taxing thing? They want things from other people that they think, probably rightly, that they will be able to get through the facade and the virtue signaling that they do. So, maybe they feel like they'll get attention, or they feel like they'll get money, or whatever. You see this on social media with women constantly. The things that they do, but, the fraud that they put up to get attention. Whether it's makeup, whether it's virtue signaling, whether it's whatever. When people have affairs, you can be your shitty, vapid, empty self, basically. Women can be their shitty, empty, vapid selves, I guess. And that's why cheaters rarely get with the person that they cheated with long term without the very same issues arising of, long-term monogamy. They haven't identified the actual problem, and the veil has to go on for that man to even tolerate her in the domestic long-term. The mask, and that's why we always hear about the mask coming off when she's gotten what she's wanted from the man, which is marriage, commitment, the money trap, the financial trap, to trap the man or whatever. Even women use that terminology.